Welcome to Silent Queen's Calling. Now let's get into the story. She found the ring in the pocket of his winter coat. Not their wedding rings, a different one. A woman's ring, small and gold, with a single sapphire. The kind of ring a man gives when he wants someone to believe in him. Genevieve Alcott found it on a Tuesday morning in February, while hanging his coat in the closet after dry cleaning. And she stood there for a long time in the hallway of the house she had designed, furnished, and paid for, holding a ring that was not hers, while her husband texted someone in the kitchen and called it a work emergency. She did not go into the kitchen. She put the ring back in the pocket, exactly where she had found it. She hung the coat. She closed the closet door, and then she walked into her home office, shut the door behind her, and sat at her desk for 40 minutes, doing nothing at all except thinking with the cold, unhurried precision of a woman who had been preparing for something like this without ever quite admitting it. Her name was Genevieve Alcott. She had been Genevieve Alcott for 39 years, including the last 7 as the wife of Brennan Cole, and she had spent so long managing the architecture of their shared life that she had nearly forgotten the architecture she had built before he ever entered it. Part 1. The Woman Before the Wife. Genevieve Alcott grew up in Baton Rouge, the only child of a civil engineer and a woman who had sold her first software patent at 32 and never looked back. Her mother, Diane Alcott, did not believe in explaining herself to people who had not earned the explanation. She built things quietly and let the results speak. Genevieve had absorbed that lesson the way children absorb everything, through proximity and repetition, until it became the structure of her own thinking. By the time she was 24, Genevieve had 2 things most people did not know about her. One was a master's degree in structural engineering from Georgia Tech, which she used openly and without apology. The other was a portfolio of architectural patents she had filed jointly with her mother's firm, generating royalty income that arrived quarterly in an account she had opened at 21, and never mentioned to anyone she dated. She was not secretive about the money out of shame. She was private about it out of experience. The first man she had loved seriously, a law student named Pierce, had stopped seeing her as a person the moment he discovered her family had money. Everything shifted. The way he introduced her at parties, the way he started speaking about their future as though her resources were his starting capital. She ended it 6 months in and spent a year recalibrating. After Pierce, she made a decision. She would live on her engineering salary. She would drive a practical car, keep a clean apartment, dress well, but not extravagantly. She would find out who loved her for the way she thought, not the size of her balance sheet. She would run the test as long as necessary. She met Brennan Cole at a professional conference in Atlanta when she was 31. He was a project manager with a construction firm, handsome in the way of men who know it but work hard enough that it doesn't matter. Confident without being loud. He asked her opinion on a panel discussion about cost overruns in municipal projects, and he actually listened to her answer. He pushed back, intelligently. She pushed back harder. He laughed. That was the beginning. They dated for a year and a half. Genevieve watched him the way she assessed structures, looking for the load-bearing elements, identifying where the stress would show. He was good to her. He was considerate, reliable, funny, in the dry, observational way that takes intelligence, he called when he said he would. He remembered the small things. When her mother was ill one spring, he drove 4 hours to Baton Rouge without being asked, sat in a hospital waiting room for 6 hours, and on the way home bought her a sandwich from a gas station and called it dinner and made her laugh despite everything. She let herself trust the assessment. They married when she was 33. Part 2. The slow erosion. The first few years were good enough that Genevieve filed them away as evidence she had made the right call. But somewhere in year 3, the architecture began to shift in ways that were almost imperceptible, unless you were trained to look at structures the way she was. Brennan's firm had a bad quarter. Then another. He handled it poorly. Not the finances. Those were manageable, but the emotional weight of it, which he distributed without asking. He became sharp in the evenings. He stopped asking about her projects. He started referring to her salary as household income, in conversations with his friends, in a tone that suggested he had contributed equally to acquiring it. She noticed. She did not say anything yet. The house was Genevieve's design, a craftsman bungalow in Decatur she had found, renovated through her professional contacts at below market rates, and paid for with a down payment drawn from the royalty account. She told Brennan the down payment came from savings. Technically, it had. She simply did not explain which account. She handled everything the way she handled all her projects, methodically and without fanfare. The utilities, the tax payments, the insurance renewals, the contractor follow-ups, the maintenance schedule she kept in a spreadsheet that Brennan had never once looked at, despite living inside its results. She managed his mother's birthday gifts and sent them signed with both their names. She coordinated his work travel calendar when his assistant was on leave, and he panicked. She was the operational backbone of a life he walked through as though it ran on its own. When she brought it up, which she did twice in year 4, he looked at her with something that was not quite dismissal and not quite recognition. The expression of a man who understood what she was saying, but had no interest in letting it land. "You're the organized one, Jen. I'm not built that way. You know that going in." She filed the response. She filed everything, not out of bitterness, out of habit. Genevieve Alcott did not make a move without documentation, professional or personal. Her mother had taught her that. Paper remembers what people choose to forget. His family was a separate category of difficulty. His older brother, Ray, had a wife who adored Brennan and treated Genevieve like a plus one. His mother, Carol, was not unkind. She was something more efficient than unkind. She was simply uninterested. Carol Cole had decided in year 1 that Genevieve was competent, but not warm, capable, but not family. And she enacted that decision with the subtlety of someone who had done it before. She would speak around Genevieve at the dinner table. She would plan family events in a group thread that Genevieve was added to late, or not at all. She would look at the meal Genevieve had cooked and say, "Brennan, you're lucky she feeds you well," as though Genevieve were a particularly functional appliance. Brennan never addressed it. When Genevieve raised it, he said, "That's just Mom. You know how she is." She knew. She knew exactly how everyone was. That was the problem with being the most observant person in every room. You saw everything clearly, and were expected to absorb it in silence, because raising it made you the difficult one. Part 3. The name in the coat pocket. The ring was not the first sign. Looking back, Genevieve could arrange the signs in order with the precision of a woman who had been noticing structural defects for months, without allowing herself to name them. The evenings he came home late and showered before dinner, the work trips that landed on weekends when they had nothing scheduled. The way his phone, which had always been face up on the kitchen counter, was now always face down or in his pocket. The particular quality of his distraction, which was not the distraction of a stressed man, but the distraction of a man managing 2 sets of information simultaneously. She had not confirmed anything until the ring. After she put it back and sat in her office for 40 minutes, she made 3 decisions. The first was that she would not confront him yet. Confrontation without information is just emotion, and Genevieve Alcott did not lead with emotion in professional or structural matters. A woman in a confrontation does not have leverage. A woman with documentation has options. The second was that she would begin gathering information with the same methodical approach she brought to an engineering assessment. Quietly, thoroughly, without telegraphing her intent. The third was that she would call her mother's attorney, William Batts, whom she had known since she was 17, and who had managed the royalty account and the patent filings, and everything connected to her professional financial life for the entirety of her adult life. She called William that evening from her car in the parking lot of a grocery store, while Brennan thought she was running an errand. "William," she said, "I need you to pull the account statements for the last 3 years and get me a full picture of the patent portfolio. And I need to know the process for restructuring the account into a holding structure." William did not ask questions. He never had. 20 years of working with Diane Alcott's family had prepared him for calls that opened this way. "I'll have everything ready by Friday," he said. "Welcome back to the driver's seat, Genevieve." Part 4. The evidence. Genevieve spent 6 weeks building a file. She was not reckless. She was not obsessive. She was thorough in the way she was thorough about everything, confirming what she needed to confirm, stopping when she had what she came for. The woman's name was Tessa Moreau. She worked in business development at a firm that had a contractual relationship with Brennan's company, which was how they had met, professionally, at a quarterly review. The relationship had been ongoing for 11 months, based on the digital trail, which was not difficult to access when you were the person who managed the household internet account, and had the login credentials Brennan used for everything, because he had asked her to set it up 4 years ago and never changed them. The sapphire ring, she eventually confirmed, had been purchased at an estate jewelry shop in Midtown 6 weeks before her birthday. On her birthday, Brennan had given her a gift card to a restaurant they liked. She had found it thoughtful at the time. She also confirmed the scope of his financial behavior during the affair period. Credit card statements she had access to, because she managed the household filing, showed dinners at restaurants she had never been to. A weekend booking at a boutique hotel 2 hours away during a conference she had not verified. A cash withdrawal pattern that had started 11 months ago and had been regular ever since. She laid it all in a folder in her home office and looked at it. She was not surprised. She was something colder and more useful than surprised. She was clear. She had the clarity of a woman who has confirmed the thing she suspected and is now free to act instead of wonder. She opened her laptop. She sent William an email with 3 attachments and a list of 6 questions. She sent a second email to an architect colleague who had been trying to recruit her to a joint venture for 2 years. She sent a third email to herself, a copy of the folder index, time-stamped and saved in a cloud account Brennan did not know existed. Then she closed the laptop and went into the kitchen and made dinner, and sat across from her husband and talked about his day. And Brennan Cole looked at his wife and saw the woman he had been living beside for 7 years, and he did not see anything different about her, because he had never looked at her closely enough to know what her face looked like when she had made up her mind. Part 5. The Conference. The opportunity came in March. Genevieve had a 5-day structural engineering conference in Charlotte. She had attended it every other year for a decade, and Brennan knew the drill. She packed methodically, kissed him at the door, and drove to the airport. She checked in, boarded, flew to Charlotte, checked into the conference hotel, attended the first day of sessions. On day 2, she had a different kind of meeting. She met with a real estate attorney she had been referred to by William. She spent 90 minutes reviewing the legal structure of the house, which was in both their names but had a documented financial contribution trail that was heavily weighted toward her, given the down payment and the renovations. She asked the right questions. She got the answers she needed. On day 3, she met with the director of a regional nonprofit focused on workforce development for women in construction and engineering. Genevieve had been funding the organization anonymously through the holding account for 4 years. She introduced herself by her full name for the first time. The director looked at her and said, "You're Genevieve Alcott. The Alcott Park patent royalties have funded 3 of our programs." "Yes," Genevieve said. "I think it's time to be less anonymous." She flew home on day 5. Brennan picked her up from the airport because she had asked him to. Specifically, she wanted to watch his face when he saw her. He looked relieved, which told her he had been concerned about something. He looked tired, which told her the week had not been restful. He kissed her at the arrival's door and took her bag and she said, "I missed you too." And both of them were performing, but only one of them knew it. That evening, after dinner, after Brennan took a call from his brother that lasted 40 minutes, Genevieve sat in her home office and sent the email she'd been drafting for 3 weeks to the family law attorney William had recommended. The subject line read, "Ready to proceed. Part 6. The Confrontation." She chose a Thursday evening in April. She chose it because Brennan was calm on Thursdays, not coming off a stressful week, not yet anticipating the weekend, and she wanted him alert, not defensive before she began. She set the folder on the kitchen table. It was a plain manila folder with a paper clip on the top left corner. Inside were 15 pages. She had reviewed them so many times she had memorized the structure. Brennan came into the kitchen at 7. He saw the folder. He saw her face. He opened the refrigerator anyway, the way people reach for something familiar when they sense the familiar is about to end. "Sit down, Brennan." He sat. He looked at the folder. He did not ask what it was. She opened it. She laid out the first page, the hotel booking. She laid out the second, the jewelry receipt. The third, a credit card statement with 4 restaurant charges she had cross-referenced against his claimed schedule. The fourth, a printout of a digital record she had every legal right to access. She did not raise her voice. She had spent 7 years managing her tone in rooms where her expertise was overlooked and her effort was invisible, and she had the muscle memory of control. 11 months, she said. Tessa Moreau, business development at Callaway Partners. Brennan's hands were flat on the table. He looked at the pages. He did not look at her. "I found the ring in February," she said. "I have spent 2 months confirming what I already knew." He started to speak. She continued. "I am not doing this because I am angry, although I am. I am doing this because I believe in documentation, and I believe in clarity, and I want you to understand exactly what the situation is before you say anything." She pulled a final page from the folder. It was a brief summary prepared by William, 2 paragraphs, outlining the financial structure of the house, the down payment, sourced from an account in her name, the renovation costs, documented through a contractor she had hired personally, the equity position. "The house is complicated," she said. "My contribution to its current value is documented. You will want to have an attorney look at this before we have further conversations." Brennan looked at the last page for a long time. "Genevieve." His voice was smaller than she had ever heard it. "I made a terrible mistake. You made a series of deliberate decisions over 11 months. That is not a mistake. That is a direction you chose. I will end it. Tonight. I will call her right now." She looked at him. She looked at him with the steady, undramatic clarity of a woman who had already moved past this moment in her planning, and was now simply present in it for his benefit. "Brennan," she said, "I want a divorce. The filing will happen Monday. You can stay in the guest room until the process begins. We can fix this. Couples fix this. Some couples fix this. We are not going to." She stood. She picked up the folder. She left the kitchen. She went upstairs. She sat on the edge of the bed. She breathed for 30 seconds. Then she opened her laptop and confirmed 3 appointments for the following week. She did not cry that night. She had done her crying in February, alone in the car in the parking lot of that grocery store, for about 12 minutes after she hung up with William. She had allowed it, processed it, and moved on. She was not a woman who revisited what she had already decided. Part 7. What Brennan did not know. The Alcott Park patent portfolio was not a small thing. Genevieve and her mother had co-developed a series of structural reinforcement methods over a 15-year period. Methods that were now incorporated into commercial building codes in 11 states. The royalty income was steady and substantial. The holding account that William managed contained, at the time of the divorce filing, enough to make Brennan Cole's salary appear, by comparison, like a rounding error. Brennan knew his wife was an engineer. He knew she was good at her job. He had attended one conference dinner in 7 years and spent the evening talking to another man's wife about college football. He had never asked Genevieve what she worked on specifically, what she had built before they met, what her name was attached to in the professional record. He had never Googled her. He Googled her in week 3 of the divorce process, when his attorney sent over the preliminary financial disclosure. And he read the section on Genevieve's assets and had to read it again. Then he called his attorney from his car in the parking lot of his office at 9 in the morning and asked him to confirm that the numbers were real. They were real. He had been married to the co-holder of a 14 patent portfolio and a 7-figure royalty account for 7 years. He had lived in a house she designed and paid for with money from work he had never asked about. He had received birthday gifts purchased on a joint credit card, while his wife received a restaurant gift card paid for with money that came from a fund she had entirely subsidized. He had called her controlling for keeping detailed household records. He had called her intense for following up on contractors. He had called her inflexible when she asked him to contribute to the mortgage payment schedule she had created, the one he found bureaucratic and unnecessary, the one that had kept them in good standing every month, without him thinking about it once. He sat in his car for a very long time. Part 8. The structure reveals itself. Genevieve had not set out to be strategic. She had simply continued doing what she had always done, which was to build things carefully and document them and let the results speak for themselves. But the results were speaking now, and they were loud. The professional network she had cultivated quietly for 15 years began to surface. Colleagues called when her name appeared in the filing, not to comment on the divorce, but to express professional regard she had never publicized. A firm in Charlotte offered her a partnership position she had been cultivating for 3 years. She accepted. She donated a named sum to the workforce development nonprofit under her full name. The donation was announced in an industry newsletter. 3 people forwarded it to Brennan. He did not know what to do with it, and so he did nothing. The bungalow sold in 6 weeks, above asking price, in a process Genevieve managed through the same contractor network she had used for the renovation. After the equity split was determined, accounting for her documented financial contributions, the number in Brennan's column was considerably smaller than he had expected. He said this to his attorney. His attorney explained, patiently, what the documentation showed. Brennan called Genevieve. She answered once, to confirm that all further communication should go through William. Then she let it go to voicemail. Part 9. The phone call. It came on a Sunday in October, 8 months after the filing. Genevieve was in Charlotte by then, in a rental apartment she had furnished simply and well, overlooking a park. She had not yet bought a house. She was taking her time. She knew what she was looking for. Her phone showed Brennan's name. She let it ring twice, then picked up. "I need to say something to you," Brennan said. "Not through the lawyers, just to you." She waited. "I looked up the Alcott Park patents," he said. "I looked up the portfolio. I looked up the nonprofit. I read your professional record, Genevieve. I actually read it." She said nothing. "I didn't know," he said. "I didn't know any of it. Not the patents, not the royalties, not any of it. I didn't know because I never asked. I never asked because I was too busy expecting you to ask about me." He stopped. She let the silence be what it was. "I spent 7 years with the most accomplished person I have ever met," he said. "And I never once asked her what she had built." "No," she said. "You didn't. I am sorry, Genevieve. Not for the right reasons at first. At first I was sorry because of the money. But I have had a lot of time to sit with it, and I think now I am sorry for the right reason. Which is that I wasn't curious about you, and you deserved someone who was." It was the most honest thing he had ever said to her. She recognized it. It did not change anything, but she recognized it. "I appreciate that," she said. And she meant it, in the limited, completed way you mean something that belongs to a chapter that is already closed. "My mother wants to apologize," he said. She told Ray she didn't know about any of it. She didn't know the house, the patents, the nonprofit. "Your mother didn't know because she wasn't interested enough to find out." "I know. She doesn't owe me an apology, Brennan. What she offered me was her honest opinion of who I was, which was that I was help. I would rather have honesty than a revised apology." A long pause. "Is there anything I can do?" "Yes," Genevieve said. "You can ask better questions about the next person you share your life with. That would be a good use of what happened here." She ended the call. She set the phone on the windowsill. Outside, the park was full of the particular Saturday energy of people who were exactly where they meant to be. She watched it for a while. Part 10. What she built next. The Charlotte position became permanent by January. Genevieve negotiated her own terms, which included a named role in a public infrastructure project she had been tracking for 2 years, a mixed-use development in the city's warehouse district that would require the kind of structural innovation she was specifically suited to provide. She bought a house in March, a mid-century modern with a flat roof and a south-facing wall of windows and a back garden she had no plan for yet, which she found exciting. She paid cash. She did not tell anyone what it cost. She had by this point stopped hiding her resources, but had not developed a habit of announcing them. Some things remained private not out of concealment, but out of preference. She was a precise woman, and she shared information precisely. Her mother visited in April and stood in the garden with her hands on her hips, looking at the flat roof and the windows and said, "You built this for yourself, not for someone else." Finally, Genevieve stood beside her mother in the garden, which had been full of someone else's plantings they had not yet decided what to do with. "Yes," she said. Her mother looked at her for a moment. "You spent a long time being smaller than you are." "I know. Is that done?" Genevieve considered the question the way she considered structural problems, from all angles, accounting for load and stress and what the material could actually hold. "Yes," she said. "I think it's done." The nonprofit released its annual report in May. Among the programs listed was a new fellowship in structural engineering for women returning to the workforce after career interruption. The fellowship was named the Alcott Fellowship. Genevieve had named it after her mother's maiden name, which was also her own, not after what she had survived, but after what she had always been. The first 3 fellows were announced in June. One of them sent Genevieve a handwritten note. It said, "I didn't know it was possible to come back to yourself this way. Thank you for making it a thing you can do." Genevieve kept the note in her desk drawer. She did not keep much. She was not a sentimental woman. But she kept things that were true. She was Genevieve Alcott. She had been building things since before anyone who underestimated her was in the picture. She would be building things long after. The patents were in her name. The fellowship was in her name. The house was in her name. The work was real, and it was documented, and it did not require anyone's recognition to remain true. She had spent 7 years being the woman who held everything together for people who never looked up to see who was doing it. She had stopped. The flat roof did not leak. She had checked the specifications herself before she bought it. Some things you know how to evaluate because you have spent a lifetime learning exactly what to look for. If this story stayed with you, subscribe and turn on notifications. We tell stories about women who remember exactly who they are. The next one is already waiting for you.